we can't dive into this without first talking about the fact that Carolina, now 3-0 with a soft schedule, playing really good football on both sides of the ball, probably suffered not the worst 2 injuries they could have suffered, but pretty close to it. Christian McCaffrey had a hamstring injury that caused him to be ruled out within a minute and a half of the injury. He was in the medical tent for roughly 15 to 20 minutes and then went back to the locker room. Jaycee Horn ruled out very quickly with a foot injury. That's their first round pick, of course, playing really high level cornerback. We talked about him, in fact, on it may be on the pick show that you'll hear tomorrow, which we record on Thursdays. Prisco thought he was a good bet, 12-1 as defensive rookie of the year. They're calling it a foot injury. It sure did look like an Achilles injury. That's what
the report is a broken foot.
Okay. All right. That broken foot would be frankly a massive win for the Panthers.
But then also Matt Rule said there were broken bones in his foot, which is slightly different than actually having a broken foot.
So I'll ask you this. Which injury, Ryan Wilson, as our resident medical expert, which injury is worse for the Panthers? Christian McCaffrey with the possibility of coming back this year? I guess Jaycee Horn could too, or the Jaycee Horn injury. Which player impacts the Panthers more? I think it's a fascinating discussion.
I think it's Christian McCaffrey. We'll find out exactly who Sam Darnold is. I mean, he looked fine against the Texans. The Texans, I say it all the time.
He went out. He looked bad when CMC went out. That offense.
No, he sort of got warmed up in the fourth quarter in that last drive when they got that final touchdown. But there were some hiccups right as soon as C-Mac went out. I don't know. That's the nickname I use for him. He took some sacks. He had a fumble that was recovered by the Panthers. And it looked a lot like some New York Jetsian type Sam Darnold quarterback play. But I think that's the big question for me. Chuba Hubbard is a nice back. He's a rookie. He clearly isn't the player that McCaffrey is, but he did some things that were okay. He dropped a touchdown pass, which you certainly would expect McCaffrey to catch, and hopefully Hubbard in the future. But I think it's certainly McCaffrey because even though Jaycee Horn is awesome, and last week, by the way, I don't know if you guys knew this, last week, 3 players whose dads played in the NFL all got interceptions as rookies. Jaycee Horn, Asante Samuel Jr., and Patrick Surtain, which is sort of cool. But the thing is that defense, we've talked about this before, is so good in Carolina that you could stand to lose one player, even a player as good as Jaycee Horn, if the front seven is still getting after it. I mean, I think to me that's the difference because I don't know if I want to see Sam Darnold without every single big-time playmaker either standing out wide or behind him, and that offensive line does have some question marks.
Yeah. So before you answer, Breech, I'm going to sneak it in because I'm worried you're going to steal my answer. It's cold take presented by Bud Light. I swear this is not a hot take.
I'm going to drink my ice cold Bud Light while you're giving your ice cold take.
Yeah. I pour mine in a glass just because I like to enjoy beer in a cold glass. My ice cold take presented by Bud Light. The Jaycee Horn injury is worse for the Panthers than the Christian McCaffrey injury. And I realize there will be pushback about that. That is a hot take. I promise it's not. For me, the way Jaycee Horn as a rookie was playing at that level, at that position, allowing Dante Jackson to cover number 2s, allowing Phil Snow to be really creative up front, knowing he has these guys locking it down to the back end, I think that is harder to replace than getting 70% of Christian McCaffrey through Chuba Hubbard. I get that Chuba Hubbard, not Christian McCaffrey. But Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, is the best running back in football. I want him out there every week. He's incredible to watch. But I think that when we look at the Panthers and their identity in 2021, which I believe will probably be or was primarily defensive based, that the Jaycee Horn injury could be worse than the McCaffrey injury. That is my ice cold take presented by Bud Light.
I don't think that's crazy. Okay. I wasn't going to steal your answer. I haven't watched enough. This is obviously the first game where I saw all 4 quarters of the Panthers defense, and they looked really as good as advertised. I saw them a little bit against the Saints, and I didn't really watch the first game against the Jets. But it does feel like right now it's McCaffrey. Maybe it doesn't end up, if Hubbard ends up turning into just 80% of the player that McCaffrey is, I think that will be enough to get them through. And that's still a ton. But I think it's McCaffrey. I agree with Wilson only because, we saw as soon as he went out with like 12 minutes left in the second quarter. And from there until halftime, the Panthers just sputtered. They fell flat on their face. That possession that McCaffrey got injured on ended with that failed 4th and 1, and McCaffrey was already out at that point. And so, boom, you turn it over.
Chuba also might have gotten that. The refs were not kind to the Panthers tonight, by the way.
Yeah, it was a real weird officiated game. But then after the failed 4th and 1, real quick, they punt, and then the end of the half when they kneeled it. And so they basically did nothing. And not only that, the only 3 sacks Sam Darnold took in this entire game came in that 12-minute stretch where McCaffrey initially went out. So it was like the Panthers just kind of didn't know what to do. And, they figured things out a little bit in the second half, but it got pretty ugly there when CMC went out.
So now that is actually a great point, and I think it's severely undervalued here. The pass protection that Christian McCaffrey brings. He lays it all out there. He's consistently responsible with his pass pro. He knows where to be. He's going to help keep Sam Darnold protected. And I mentioned it was the preview with Sully, and then again on HQ earlier. If you look at what they were doing, Joe Brady was setting up Sam Darnold and they did this this is when the offense looked great tonight. He would have Sam Darnold take 2 reads and go through them very quickly. And it was like, look, if you aren't comfortable with this throw, just ignore it. Next one, if you're not comfortable, ignore it. And then the third read would usually be a Christian McCaffrey dump off. And that's a really smart way to handle it, because you're basically saying, if that's not a great look, throw it to CMC and he's going to be open because he's smart enough to do that. And the pass pro, again, key. I do wonder, Breech, if there was some sort of shell shock for the Panthers, like in the sense of they realized that CMC wasn't, he's announced out, and, you find out on the sideline, they're like, whoa, we were kind of rolling and he was our focal point. And like, now what do we do? I mean, do you think that's a valid theory?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. And they kind of played like that. It was kind of because that if they get that 4th and 1 and maybe score a touchdown there, I think they go up 14-0. Everyone's relieved. They get out there with a bigger blowout than it doesn't ever feel close. This game felt close for a while. And it does feel like they were a little shell shocked, because the next time they got the ball after that 4th and 1, these weren't just punting on 2 straight possessions. They went 3 and out.
Yep.
So it was pretty ugly. And it felt like they're like, oh God, Sam Darnold, that Christian McCaffrey has him there as the check down guy. He has him there for pass protection, and that's probably the one thing where you wouldn't trust a rookie. So now he's, Sam Darnold seeing ghosts. He's back in New York. So it is those things you have to worry about, because you start getting the quarterback's head and then he starts to struggle. Yeah. And then it gets crazy.
And the only reason the Texans scored a touchdown is the Panthers got the ball with 2:08 left in the first half, and they go 3 and out and punt to the Texans. And at that point, David Culley and his offensive staff decided to do this crazy thing where you get the ball out quickly and throw the football down the field instead of going run, make Davis Mills figure something out up there down. And what happened was it was just Brandon Cooks was wide. It was just like pepper Brandon Cooks with targets in a hurry up offense. They scored a touchdown, and they didn't do it again for the rest of the game naturally.
I would push back on the shell shock stuff. I just think that you lost Christian McCaffrey. They only played 3 games last year. It wasn't like they're accustomed to having Christian McCaffrey out there. He had 2 catches for 9 yards. Chuba had 3 catches for 27 yards. So there was still the possibility to give him the ball. And by the way, if the first read is what Joe Brady wanted to do quickly, 1-2, and then C-Mac or Hubbard, DJ Moore was open every freaking time that he looked up. So DJ Moore and Brandon Cooks were the only guys catching passes on Thursday night.
Real quick, McCaffrey had 9 touches in the first quarter, basically. So he was on pace to get 36 touches in this game. So
no, but they have him on a pitch count, so he wasn't going to get 36 touches.
Well, I saw this from our pal Greg Rosenthal of NFL Media, that noted that last week against the Saints in that blowout victory, Christian McCaffrey still getting touches in the Panthers' final drive. Which, I mean, look, the guy missed a ton of time last year because he led the NFL in touches in 2019. Maybe be a little bit smarter about it. By the way, the Millie Maker was chopped a ton of ways. The first place tie for first place won $46,000, which is very nice. You had to have the Stones not to play Christian McCaffrey in Showdown DFS, which is not easy. That's not a. Yeah, but
that's also how you win $1 million.
That's correct.
So
winning millions not easy.
One night.
So as Breech noted in our little private Slack channel, our buddy Joe Person, William Mary in the house, said that Sam Darnold said during his post-game presser that he thinks McCaffrey will be back during the season, but that's him being optimistic. It's just a hamstring. He's coming back no longer than 4 or 5 weeks, worst case, I would think. So it must be something.
Well, that's what Darnold is making it sound like it ripped off the bone or something crazy like that. Exactly. If he's saying, I feel optimistic because saying he'll come back this season.
Tyrod Taylor is the unluckiest person in the NFL, and he's on IR. He'll be back in 3 or 4 weeks. And hamstrings typically or 4 to 6 week thing, worst case.
Your audio, yeah, I know you're right. It's typically a 4 to 6 week. Could be my audio. My computer's being weird, but yes.
So he's likely not coming back till sometime November at the earliest, best case scenario. And if it's worse than that, then you're looking late December, maybe the playoffs.
Right. Worst case is November. Is what you're saying.
No. Well, best case is November.
Wait, why is it best case? What if it's only 4 weeks?
That's 4 weeks. You're looking at.
I don't think it's 4.
Almost taking you to November. Their next game's in October.
If it's a typical hamstring, then I think 4 weeks is reasonable. Yeah, late October, Halloween time. I get that. Yeah, but I thought you meant like Thanksgiving or something.
No, like November 1st.
Yeah.
So the way that it happened, whenever we see those non-contact injuries and somebody's wheeled out of there, and they're like, and before the card even hits the exit tunnel, they're like, he's been ruled out.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Buck even prefaced it with this like ominous. He's like, we have some news we have to get to here. They go to Aaron Andrews. She's like, Christian McCaffrey has been ruled out. It's like, whoa, nobody's even seen him since he left on that play. And
but if you tear your hamstring, immediately you're not going back in. So it's not like, and it's not as bad as an Achilles, because when you see the Achilles go up the guy's calf or whatever, it's just like, okay, I tore my hamstring. I can walk, but he walked to the locker room. You can walk with a torn hamstring. You can't run. Sure. That's the problem.
My point is just that when someone is ruled out that quickly, it is generally a very bad sign for we've covered the NFL long enough. When somebody is ruled out within less than 5 minutes of the injury happening, it is typically a sign that it's a severe injury. And now Sam Darnold's, as you point out, throwing out to our pal, good friend of the show, Joe Person, that he is probably being optimistic that CMC will be back this year.
Well, I think part of the issue is they don't like to give that information. So the fact that they let us know early, it's just them perhaps slipping. But the thing, if you tear your hamstring, as Breech notes, if you tear it off the bone, that's a problem. But
my point is that Jaycee Horn fell down, started pointing at his leg and calling for the trainers, and they said he was questionable return with a foot injury.
No, I don't. Again, I have no idea.